Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started in 3 or 4 minutes here. If you can hear me okay, will you raise your hand? Thanks, y'all. All right, everyone, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us today. This is Probably not going to be as seamless and flawless as it could be, given that there are multiple folks facilitating this training across many different individual homes and computer screens. So we may have to take small breaks during transitions to get everybody set up and make sure that folks presenting can share their screen. So we just ask that you bear with us today, and we're thankful for your understanding. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to kick off the first few slides before I turn it over to the CCAP team. Oops. So today we're going to talk about an overview of the Early Childhood Guide pilot, the EC Guides pilot. I will say that for most of you on this call, those of you who have been sort of captaining this work, this will likely be a refresher. For those of you on this call who have not yet engaged in a conversation about what this work will look like, this will be new to you. We will likely, and we'll discuss this later in this training before the end, but we will likely set up a couple more training opportunities as you all begin to onboard new folks who will take on some of this work. So there will be an opportunity for you to see some of this content again as well. We're also going to talk about the benefits of the Early Childhood Guide pilot and why it is that we are pursuing this work at this time. We'll talk about, from a high level, what the job responsibilities of these folks who will be serving as early childhood guides will be. Then I will turn it over to my colleagues on the CCAP team, and they are going to go through the CCAP program, the Child Care Assistance Program, and really drill down into eligibility and how to actually support families through the CCAP application process. We're going to end by talking a little bit about outreach and recruitment strategies, and then talk about next steps and questions that you all have. So with that, I'm going to jump straight into the overview. So as I already mentioned, most of you have likely seen some of these slides, but I wanted to ground us in the vision for early childhood and the strategy for early childhood in Louisiana. You'll notice that there are these 4 categories here on the screen, and the very first one is expanded access, that all children have the opportunity to access a high-quality early learning program. It was really this guiding belief and this guiding vision that we have at the department that led us to develop the Early Childhood Guides pilot. We really want as many families across the state who have young children under the age of 5 and who are in need of publicly funded care to be able to access that care as possible. And we see the Early Childhood Guides pilot as one avenue to support this goal. Of course, the overarching vision for early childhood in Louisiana is that all children enter kindergarten ready to learn. And in order to reach this goal, we know that every day children under the age of 5 in Louisiana need to be engaged in classrooms that do these 4 things: respond to their emotions with sensitivity and warmth, are organized to manage their attention, time, and behavior, promote their learning through engaging language and interactions, and support their development with high-quality instructional tools. Unfortunately, many families do not have access to classrooms that look like this, in part because they're not able to access formal care through public funds. And we really want to encourage as much of that as possible. So we're going to be talking about how the Early Childhood Guides pilot will help us accomplish these goals. For those of you on the phone who may be new to this work or less familiar with this work than some of your colleagues in your Ready Start networks, we also wanted to kind of ground this work in the timeline of this work so that you're aware of how this situates into a broader set of activities. So I just want to highlight some of the past activities that many of you on the phone have been deeply involved with over the course of the last 8 years. So in 2012, Act 3 was passed, which sought to unify the early childhood system in the state of Louisiana. To build on that work and to achieve the goals outlined in Act 3, the first pilots of community networks were launched in 2013-2014. By 2015-2016, there were early childhood community networks touching every community in the state. There are now 65 community networks across the state who function to administer the early childhood work and coordinate the early childhood work at the local level. In 2017, the state achieved full implementation of the statewide unified quality rating system by releasing performance profiles for the 2016-2017 year. In 2019, we, as a state, built on the work of community networks to launch the Ready Start Network pilot, of which many of you on the phone are engaged in directly. So the Ready Start Network work was really designed to advance the leadership that we were already seeing of community networks at the local level. And there are 13 community networks that took on this work to become a Ready Start network to really lead the charge at the local level to expand access to high quality care. And then in 2020, we as a state were awarded the Preschool Development Grant Renewal, which meant that we became one of 20 states in the country awarded this renewal grant. And this grant will allow us to continue the work of Ready Start networks and will allow us to fund the early childhood guide pilot that we'll be discussing today. I believe everyone on the call is familiar with our unified quality rating system. I know that some folks are onboarding new staff, so I do just want to kind of hold space for this in case this is new for anyone listening in. Louisiana is unique in that it has a unified quality rating system for all publicly funded early childhood programs. So pre-K, childcare, and Head Start and early Head Starts are rated using the same tool and the same methods. And those ratings are communicated on our Louisiana School and Center Finder, which is really designed to be a parent and family-friendly tool so that they can make informed decisions about where to enroll their children. And you can see here this scale that's used for the unified quality rating system, each of the performance ratings correlating with the class score range, and then you can see roughly how many sites based on the 2018-2019, which is the most recent year of data, how many sites fall into each of those categories. I wanted to leave this here because I think it's really important as you all think about how to structure this work and how to partner more directly with families and how to support them through the application process, that you're aware of the various resources available to you, both at the local and at the state level, so that you can support families to make the best and most informed decisions about where to place their children once they are in the CCAP application process. And then, of course, to ground us in some data and thinking about why it is that we care so much about expanding access and why it is that this is such a focus of our strategy this year and likely in the future. When we look at the data of how many children in each of these age groups that we work with are served through public funds in a high quality program, the numbers are really staggering. If you look at the number of 4-year-olds, which is this column over to the right, you'll see that we're reaching 94% of 4-year-olds that are economically disadvantaged across the state. And the vast majority of those are in high quality programs, 86%. However, if you look at the lower age groups, you'll see that that gray bar that is unserved through public funds gets larger and larger. So much so that among our economically disadvantaged households, the infants, only 3% of those infants are served through public funds. And the majority of the rest are either unserved or served in some way where families are not accessing publicly funded programs. Okay, so now I'll talk a little bit about the benefits of this pilot and what we hope this pilot will accomplish. So in a high level, the early childhood guides will work in your community network. So they will function as a part of the Ready Start network, and they will work directly with families to reduce barriers that families may experience in the child care assistance application process. And we really believe that doing this work, partnering directly with families and recruiting families directly, going out into the community, making partnerships that will lead to families being recruited to apply and supported to apply, will have benefits for many different members of your community. So first and foremost, we believe that this will be beneficial to families. We believe that families who are equipped with a person or a group of people at their community level whose sole responsibility is to partner with them to provide a more individualized experience applying for CCAP will really mean that they face fewer barriers, or when they do face barriers or challenges in the application process, they have someone right there with them that can help solve the problems and really walk them through the process. We hope that ultimately what this means is that more families apply for CCAP and that more families are taking advantage of CCAP. The next person that we think, or group of people that we think this will benefit, is childcare providers. We know that right now, because of the way the CCAP application process has been structured, a lot of burden is placed on childcare providers to support families do this work and apply for CCAP. So we see in many cases, childcare providers are the family's touch point for the program. They're walking them through what to do. In some cases, they're helping them fax in materials or helping them apply for the program directly. This is a pretty great burden on childcare providers who are already overworked in many cases, underpaid in most cases, and whose primary responsibility really is not to be a liaison to the child care assistance program. So we hope that this alleviates some of that burden on child care providers. We also hope that it benefits Ready Start networks and the goals that you all have defined as Ready Start networks. We believe that by recruiting families and reducing some of this bureaucracy, that the early childhood guide function in the Ready Start networks will really help achieve the goals outlined in your blueprints, almost all of which have expanding access to children birth through age 3. So we really hope this helps you all define a vision for that work and really implement strategies to expand access at the local level. And then, of course, I would just say that across the state of Louisiana, this is going to make an impact. If more families can get their kiddos into high quality care, it will have benefits on communities for years and generations to come. So now I'll talk a little bit about the job responsibilities as we see them before I hand it over to the CCAP team. All right, so the early childhood guides will likely look very different in the different communities. We are running this pilot as a number of contracts, which mean, as I've previously described to you all, that you have a great deal of flexibility in how you actually implement this work. So we're not going to be overly prescriptive about how many people you hire or who you task with doing this. The way we'll be monitoring this is through deliverables in the form of applications for the child care assistance program, and how you get there, how you arrive at those applications. We want to cultivate creativity, and we know that you all have a lot of good ideas about how to do this work already. So how you will do it will look different, but in general, we expect that these 4 big responsibilities will be present probably in all of the communities that this pilot will exist. So first and foremost, we hope that the early childhood guides will situate themselves as someone who will learn from families. We think this will be important for many reasons. Both from a state agency perspective, we're eager to learn from you all as you do this work about what could be improved upon or what is challenging for families or how families are perceiving the early childhood work in the state. But also from a local level, we believe that your communities and your community networks will benefit from someone who is chiefly learning from families and supporting families directly. We also expect that the guides will not just sort of sit and wait for families to come to them, but that the guides will actually be out in the community recruiting eligible families, which may mean that they need to make partnerships with employers or community organizations, but they will be actively recruiting eligible families to submit applications. Next, they will be assisting families to complete the application and to actually help organize the various documents they need and collate them for efficient processing. And then they will also be expected to communicate directly with LDOE, with the CCAP team and with members of our team to get this work going really well and to expedite the assessment of family eligibility once applications have been submitted. So we'll talk a little bit about each of these job responsibilities. So the first piece, to learn from families. We expect guides to do the following things. We expect them to really try to understand the needs of families, and this can be accomplished in many ways, by asking questions, by having conversations with families, by administering surveys, by conducting some sort of needs assessment. Again, I think this will look different across the different communities depending on the size of the community and the particular needs. We then hope they will begin to really understand and put themselves in the shoes of families so that they can know and identify barriers and challenges that impact families' ability to successfully apply for the child care assistance program. We hope that they share these learnings back with the Ready Start Network captains as well as us at the DOE. The next category is recruiting eligible families. So as I mentioned, we really hope that the early childhood guides are actively recruiting families to apply. And I think in order to do that successfully, they will likely have to identify some opportunities and partnerships in the community for continuous outreach and family engagement. So we know that this might look like contacting large employers in the community and making information available there, or perhaps setting up a table and handing out pamphlets. Again, this is going to look different, and we really encourage creativity on the part of you all who have joined the call today. We hope that these guides will build relationships in the community so that there are long-term partnerships and long-term channels are created for communication and outreach with families. Then, of course, they will provide information and guidance to families on the benefit of the program, the options available to them, and the process for applying and being eligible for CCAP. And then they will recruit those families, which should and likely will include non-native English speaking families. So I think it's important to think about how are we setting up ourselves to be successful to do this work in an inclusive way and reaching the needs of all families in the community. Next, once they've actually recruited or made a connection with a family who's interested in applying for the Child Care Assistance Program, these guides will actually assist the families directly. So and of course this will likely look a little different during the time that we're in now. We'll talk a little bit about that later, about how this work will actually get started remotely. But the vision for this is that you're actually sitting down with the families to help them complete the applications for CCAP. You're going through the packet of documents and required forms, making sure that they have everything. In cases where the families cannot actually submit the application themselves, or cannot access documents or eligibility information online because they don't have access to a computer or internet, you're facilitating some way for them to use a computer, you're offering them Wi-Fi, something like that. You're helping families schedule immunization appointments if applicable. And then before applications are submitted, the early childhood guides should really be checking the applications for completeness, for correctness, and that they are meeting all of the eligibility requirements before that application is ever submitted. And then last, you will work with the Department of Education to expedite the assessment of family eligibility. We really hope that by having boots on the ground who are really focused on this work, and by working closely with the CCAP team at the department, the process for assessing eligibility will run smoother and hopefully faster, and we need your partnership in order to do this. So all of the early childhood guides who are onboarded, if they're not already on this call, will attend CCAP eligibility determination training and ongoing training if necessary. They'll demonstrate proficiency in the application processing, in order to really be able to do this work. They'll transfer applications from homeless families immediately to CCAP upon receipt. They will track applications using a shared Google document for a 5 to 10 day processing time. And I believe Melinda's team, the CCAP team, will talk more about that today, what that will look like. They will respond to calls and emails from LDOE staff promptly, and they will feel free and they are encouraged to reach out to CCAP eligibility staff with any questions as they come up, in particular as they really begin this work and begin to have questions about this process. So now I'm going to turn it over to Melinda, I believe.
Yes. Taylor, I'm going to ask you to keep your screen up and you can facilitate. It'll make the transition between us because we will be going back and forth between three members of the CCAP team.
Okay.
So that way it won't take as long to go through the transition process.
That's fine. If there's ever anything where you guys need to share your screen, just let me know.
Sounds great. Well, first, let me greet all of you out there, Paula, and many of you, I've seen your name, Amy. It is so great to see you guys online today. We've been around to the different areas and we've talked to many of you during the process. So a lot of you, some of the information that you see in this first training, you've already seen or we've already explained to you, but we want to go a little more in depth. This first process is needed in order to get to the part where the guides are looking at their desktop and looking at the information and how to submit the information. So again, I greet you. Much of what we've put together in the development of our processes has changed slightly because of COVID-19, as you all know. I hope all of you have been safe. Your staff has been safe. Your families have been safe. But some things may be tweaked because of our new normal. First, let me share with you that the Child Care Assistance Program, as you all know, it allows, and Taylor spoke so eloquently about, it allows families to access affordable, high-quality child care. Many of you have been doing the work similar to the guide as lead agencies, as R&R agencies, as providers. You've worked with the provider help desk, with provider certification. Families come to you in great need with a lot of problems, and you have been providing them computers, helping them to schedule appointments. Much of what we've been doing, you've been doing informally, and I think now we're formalizing a process that will be both beneficial to families and to you guys. The Child Care Assistance Program, as you know, is federally operated through the Louisiana Department of Education. And it's, as we said, families have to work at least 20 hours a week or attend full-time school. And that was just recently, in the last couple of years, implemented. And it was because of you guys and because of the needs out there. Just like the guides are being implemented because we hear the concerns of R&Rs, providers, and families. As Taylor explained, providers are working to help families to submit applications, which their main concern has to be taking care of the children and providing a high quality child care. Presently, and this number was done prior to the pandemic applications because it has changed significantly. Presently, prior to the pandemic applications, we served roughly about 17,000 children. Again, because we're now taking pandemic applications, and you know the qualifications for those are slightly different, that number has gone up. Next slide, Taylor. When we talk about completing the application process, the EC Guide will work with families and the staff to increase the number of complete and eligible applications. You guys know that we've talked as we go out. One of the biggest deterrents, or one of the largest reason for rejection is that families submit the application, but then they don't submit the supporting documents. And because, as we've explained during our many forums, that documentation is as important as the application. We're audited constantly. We had 3 audits this year. And we're audited to make sure that we have justification for every eligible application. The justification comes in the forms of the documents that are submitted. The documents have to meet certain criteria. So in step 1, the guide will assist families in understanding the eligibility criteria and required documents. And that's what we've gone around the state. We've shared with you guys on numerous occasions, but we want, and this today, that's a lot of what we're going to talk about. Step 1, understanding the eligibility criteria. It's not just about submitting an application, but it's helping families to submit what we need in case we're audited. The fact that we are so thorough in what we accept from families helps us to secure and to use the federal funds with integrity. We want to make sure that during an audit, we can document for every application that we have met all federal state requirements. Step 2, prior to submission, the guide will ensure the application is completely filled out inside and that all the eligibility requirements are met and the origin of the application is tracked. It is very important that we're able to track applications back to families. Another big problem that we've had in the application process is that the families we serve are very transient, and we have to be able to track information back. When we were removing families from the wait list, we cried out to you guys to help us to find families who were certified eligible, but we could no longer track them because they had left from where they were and they were living somewhere else. And so eventually they were put on the underutilized tracker, and they were removed from service, which is terrible because we know they needed the service, but it's our inability as a state agency to track where families are. So the guide is going to be very important in building those face-to-face relationships and being able to track families so that once they are certified eligible, they will be able to find out, get the information to them. Or if something else is needed, they'll be able to get the information to them. Step 3, complete and submit the application with the family using available online resources. We receive a lot of paper application documents, and it's easier, it's faster when we use the online resources that we have for families so that we can send them. We want to process an application very quickly, and Sharon Booker will talk further about that. But when we want to process an application very quickly, so when we use the online resources, the online submission processes, it's easier And we use those online resources to communicate back to the families. It's easier, it's expedited, it's quicker. Step 4, may assist head of household with completing the CCAP 10 report of change form and submit to OnBase and the family's experience if the family experiences household changes after the application has been submitted. Many families, especially now, I mean, we have families who are changing providers, they're adding babies to their application, they're removing children from their application, they're doing address changes, they're doing other changes that are significant to the application, and they're not getting back with us, they're not completing the complete documents. So the guide will help them to submit those changes. So if a family goes from provider A to provider B can get paid as quickly as possible because the CCAP 10 has been sent, and we can change where payments are. Next slide, Taylor. The child care assistance program timelines are going to be shared with you by Sharon Booker. Sharon Booker is the new program manager 1 over eligibility. She'll share with you a couple of slides before it comes back to me. Sharon?
Good morning, everyone. My task is to talk to you about the application timeline. It is our goal with this application timeline to minimize the time restraints that the applicant normally incurs. And with using the EC guides, we'll be able to get the information that's needed to process the application. Our goal is 10 days. We plan on turning the applications, having them certified and be able to start childcare within the 10-day period. Within the first 5 days, the EC guide receives the information and he or she submits it to the office. If there's any additional information from the family that is needed, the EC guide would be the one who would get that information to the completion team at the office to ensure that a quick expedited application takes place. Within the next 5 days, the application will be fully processed and the analyst will verify the documentation that the EC guide has received from the applicant, such as the employment, the immunizations, check stubs, unearned income credit if the applicant receives that. And the EC guide will be notified of the final application status after the case has been processed. If the case is, we do not receive the information, the case will remain in the wizard. So we will not have the rejected case.
And let me explain what the wizard is, guys. That's a new term that you guys may not have heard before, but as we get into the training, as we get more in depth in the actual process, you're gonna learn what the wizard is. I want you to think of the wizard as a holding bin, a place where, a holding bin, a purgatory, for lack of a better word, for all applications. It'll be where the EC Guides applications are submitted, are on hold if they're not complete. So you guys will be able to go into the wizard and see what's going on. So that's a new term, and I just wanted to define it for you guys. I'm sorry, Sharon, go on.
Next slide, Taylor, please. Application status. Upon receiving the completed applications, the analyst will process the applications. They're going to verify the documents, determine eligibility, and update the EC guide of the application status within the 10 days, as I first said. A complete application is an application that has all the documentation that is required, the criteria is required to become CCAP eligible. Danielle will talk about that later in the slides. Example, the family submitted all required and needed verification for processing. This is a complete application. An incomplete application would be that the status of the CCAP applicant does not provide the verification needed to determine eligibility, which means that they may have turned in check stubs that were not within the 45-day time frame. If so, this would be an incomplete application. We would ask that the EC guys would reach out to the families, get those needed check stubs that within the 45-day time frame, which we will look at later on in the slides to determine which is 45 days, and get it back to the completion team. Once that has been turned into the completion team, you receive an email letting you know that we have received it, verified it, and the case is ready to be certified. Next slide. Submission of applicants. The EC guides and the families will conduct an in-person interview to complete the CCAP applications. And we had to add this in because we're in a pandemic. So we use the precautions that are set aside for COVID-19, whatever that should be. Since you're doing in-person interviews, if it means masking up or what have you, we expect that you would use precautions for your safety as well as the clients. Include our verification documents with initial submission to reduce processing delays, search for active cases, and we'll look at that when we get to the dashboard, and create a new case if selected. And Ms. George just told you the new whiz word is wizard. The wizard is what you'll be using to submit the applications. Ensure documents capture all details, check stubs. On the check stubs, there are certain things that analysts look for. We will train the EC guys on how and what to look for on the check stub, which would be hours, the rate of pay. If they're in school, they need a transcript with that school or a letter from that school saying that they're doing full-time or part-time school. Child support, if they receive child support, they need 6 months of child support. If the application is incomplete or awaiting verification, it will remain in the wizard again until the EC guide retrieves all documentation from the family. And a CCAP member will track cases that are delayed due to verifications not being submitted in a timely manner, which means we will correspond with you from time to time, and we need you to answer our emails so to make sure that we are taking care of business as needed in a timely manner. Next slide. Submitting the application. After submitting the application, families will be contacted by phone or mail after application is submitted for additional verification to process the case if needed. EC guides will secure additional verification documents from families and submit to the completion team. EC guides will communicate with families via the consultation form. And the consultation form is a form that we will look at when we get to the dashboard, and it tells what is needed. The family takes that with them. They see that this is what they need to bring back. You give them a 5-day time period to return that to you. Families will receive information on how to access the early learning development standards, which is ELDS, from the completion team once the application is processed. Families must complete finger images at their nearest tax tracking services in their community. The EC guide will send an email to the completion team that the finger image has been completed, and the completion team will put on authorizations for that case.
Okay, guys. Now,
Child Care Assistance Program will go on to, I think, Danielle. I'm gonna let you.
no, it goes to me. It goes to me. I got it. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much. There's a lot that we're sharing, and I know at the end we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. When we bring up new terms like the consultation form, like the wizard, just you can jot it down on something, because when we go into the actual hands-on, I promise you will understand all of these. You will understand what they mean. You will understand how to utilize them. We're putting them out there. It's kind of like this first getting your taste buds, I guess, wet for the next process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about eligibility, and then Danielle is going to go into some actual scenarios that'll help you to understand. First, I'm gonna give you an overview of eligibility. The Child Care Assistance Program provides access to child care at licensed child care centers with a reduced cost for eligible families. And our eligibility criteria is not something that is developed just in correlation with the state standards, with Bulletin 139. It's also federal ACF standards. All of our criteria are in place to ensure that the neediest of families receive this service, that families fall within the federal and state criteria for this service. Eligibility determination criteria is the household size, and Danielle is gonna give you examples of that. Many times families get confused about what an actual household is, and I think by the time Danielle does her explanations, you'll understand what a household is. Household income. When families initially apply for child care assistance, they must be at the 55% state median income or below. After they've received child care assistance for a year, we call that redetermination. They can be within 55 to 85, and they get what's called graduated phase out. We increase co-pays. So the guide needs to understand both phases because families will be coming to them. And that's why we're doing this overview of eligibility. The guide has to know as much about CCAP as we do, because the guide is going to become the person that, I call it the ambassador, the person that both represents CCAP to the family, but also represents the family to the CCAP program. So that guide has to be as knowledgeable about eligibility criteria as we do. The number of hours, and you may have heard it referred when we talk to you or you talk to your worker as ENT hours. So our ENT hours are our work and our training hours, our income and our eligibility and training hours. Families have to work at least 20 hours a week, or be in full-time school, or have a combination of the two in order to qualify for services. Now, when Danielle talks more about special populations, you'll see that with disability families, that 20 hours a week drops to 15 hours a week to be eligible for services. So we want you to understand those, and it's gonna take some time, and that's why we said to you that the EC guide is going to work directly. Sharon Booker, who is now over eligibility, will be a point of contact for all EC guides. They'll be able to call her. She has a state phone, and y'all know what I say when I go out to your areas, help them use those phones. Never apologize for having to call us. But you'll be able to, EC guides will be able to contact Sharon Booker directly so they can ask the questions, especially initially. We don't expect you to just jump out understanding all of our eligibility criteria, understanding all of the things that we do. We're going to be in place to help you.
Melinda, are you still there?
It's okay. This is Danielle. I'll jump in for her. Good morning, everybody.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
That's okay.
You kind of faded out there, Melinda, but go ahead if you want to continue. I was just jumping in for you.
Okay, sounds good. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't realize I faded out. But our education and training hours are very important to the program. And if you've ever heard us say ENT, that's what we're talking about. In the child care program, there are a lot of acronyms. And we want to make sure that we explain each acronym to the guide, that they understand it, that if families hear those acronyms in their discussions, when they call the call center, if providers hear those acronyms, they know exactly what we're talking about. We tried our best to go out into the community and to speak the same language so that we can all be speaking the same language. Next slide. Who is eligible for child care assistance? Now, everybody that has been an R&R for the last, let's say, since our last forum was the summer of 2019, should have this form. We shared with you that this is what we call our CCAP Bible. It's how do you, when a family first comes to you, if they can answer yes to these 3 questions, they probably qualify for CCAP. And we've asked providers to post it, to share this with families. Many of you share this with families. Is the family responsible for paying child care for a child under 13 and or under 18 who is disabled and lives at home? If they answer yes to that, and does every adult in the family household work or attend school or training program for at least 20 hours a week, or a combination of both, or 15 hours if the household is disabled, if they can answer yes to that also, or is the family's total gross earned and unearned? And I need you guys to, that if you want to write something down, that is very important, earned and unearned income. Many times we have families who will give us their earned income, but hold back their unearned income. Unearned income is like child support and other support. We need that income as well. And so guides have to be trained in order to access that. A lot of times what happens with families who submit applications is they don't realize that we have access to certain databases where we can pull up, not all, but we can pull up, or we can see a lot of history or a lot of unearned income. And so we want to make sure that guides are trained to encourage families to not only give gross earned income, but unearned income. And if that unearned income and earned income is less than the chart you see at the bottom for the number of household, 2-person household, $2,411 a month. If it's less than this, then, and they answer yes to all 3, they probably qualify for child care assistance. Again, this does not include the pandemic applications, because you do know that with the pandemic applications, the qualifying factor is that you meet one of the essential work areas. And that's just a sidebar for those of you who may start collecting, and this stay-at-home order may extend, you may be collecting pandemic applications as well. So just remember, income is not a determining factor with those. Next slide, Taylor. Who is considered a household? It's very important that we understand that a household composition isn't everyone that lives in the house. And Danielle is going to show you in her scenarios, many times families, and our analysts are trained to weed through and to help identify who is the person living in the house, who is the persons in the household composition. And we want the EC guides to also be trained in this so they can prompt families to give them the right information. The head of household, or the primary person whose income is counted, the person that is financially responsible for the child that they're seeking assistance for. The head of household, legal or non-legal spouse, which may include the child's biological mother or father, and or the partner of the head of household. So that's part of, considered as part of the household. All household dependents under the age of 18, grandparents, cousins, and other adults living in the home are not considered part of the household. So Danielle, again, is going to help you to understand that, because it can become tricky. For example, if a child is a MUP, which is another acronym, MUP, minor underage parent, then the grandparent, who may be the legal financial have the legal financial responsibility, is counted. So Danielle is going to go through some scenarios that help you to understand those. A child must be living in the household more than 50% of the time to be eligible for CCAP, 51%. And the reason we say that is because you guys know we have a lot of families who are divided, and children live between mother and father. They may live with mother for a certain amount of time, and then with father for a certain amount of time. And even though that child can get a split authorization, they are counted in one household, and it's the household with the 51%. Next slide. what verification documents are needed. And Danielle, again, is going to go deeper into that. I'm just giving you a broad overview. As Sharon mentioned, the last 4 consecutive check stubs within 45 days. This is for families. We have found that this is always a back and forth. Families want to use the, we have a form that is a wage verification form, but that form should only be used in special circumstances. For example, if a family just got a new job, or head of household just got a new job, and they have not yet received a check stub, then we allow them to use that verification form, and we do verify it. The reason we are very limited, we try to limit the use of this form, is because it is our #1 most fraudulent document. It's sad to say we've had families to lose their actual job because they forged a name on this document. And we try our best not to encourage families to send in fraudulent documents. Because we are a state agency, we don't want to encourage families to commit fraud. And so what we do is we ask families to use the check stubs unless they have just started a new job and they haven't been working for the full 45 days. And then we call the place where they submit. We don't necessarily speak to the person that is signed on the form. We would speak to HR or the person responsible for payroll for their department. So a lot of times they'll put a coworker, they'll sign a coworker, expecting us to call that coworker, but we're calling for someone in HR who's responsible for check stubs. And so that's how it has become our #1 most fraudulent document. All unearned income documentation. We ask families to print a history of child support and send that along with their documentation. And we share with families what is counted, but a lot of times those are the things that we don't get, or we receive information that is not concise with what we're seeing. For example, families would tell us, I didn't receive child support in the last year. And we can look on the system and we can see sporadic checks that went out to this family. So all earned and unearned income. Birth certificates for all children in the household. The reason we had to institute birth certificates is because we looked to see a connection to the head of household. Families were claiming children that weren't necessarily connected to the household. Social Security cards for all household members. It is optional. We don't necessarily need those to process, but we ask families, if at all possible, to send that information. It helps to tie, but it is optional. Immunization records for all children needing care. What is so sad is that many families, this is the one thing that holds them up from being certified. We either need the immunization record or we need an appointment card. And if we get an appointment card, we need the family to follow up with that appointment. Because we want what's best for children, because the federal government mandates certain shots, unless a family opts out because of religion or other, and then they need documentation for that, or medical needs, we have to have this. And a lot of families, a lot of children are well behind. We've seen children who've never had an immunization, or they've had 1 or 2. And so before those children go into childcare centers where they're exposed to so many different diseases, we want to make sure that those children are safe. And so that is a requirement. A detailed school schedule. If a family is saying that they want childcare assistance because they're in full-time school, we need a detailed school schedule. Verification of a disability, that's SSI, VA benefits, if applicable. Next slide. And this is further on what I just explained. Birth certificates, social security cards, those are the verifying documents. Immunization, a shot record or a doctor's record. Verification of a child with special needs, an IEP. In order for us to pay at a special needs rate, we need verification of a child's special need or disability. And that verification can be an IEP or an IFSP, CCAP 35 and special needs form signed by a doctor, CCAP disability form, doctor's note. Those are the different forms that we use to verify that a child is disabled. We pay the child care center at a higher rate. One of the biggest obstacles that guides will have to help with is that many families are really afraid, even though a child is receiving an IEP or an IFSP, to submit documents that verify disability, because they're afraid that because we're the Department of Education, we label children, or those records would follow a child to school. We have had numerous conversations with families to reassure them that that does not happen. We're just using that document to pay the child care center at a higher rate. If the child is disabled, they don't go on a wait list. If we're collecting children, we're putting children on a wait list, that child, because they have those documents, would not go on a wait list. So we've had families who, when we were in the middle of a wait list, who chose to go on a wait list before they would submit those documents. They were that afraid. Verification of adult disability would come in the form of SSI. And the reason you want to verify an adult disability is because then that family is only required to meet a 15-hour criteria. School attendance or job training, statement from a school or job indicating the number of hours attendance per week, and again, from an accredited entity or training program. Wages, the last four check stub, the last four consecutive, that is very important, consecutive check stubs. And the reason we check that, and Danielle will go further into detail as she explains, is because many times, for example, during the Christmas holidays, families make more hours, but it's not guaranteed. They may have one check stub where they worked 80 hours, but then the other check stubs show 30 hours. We throw out the high because we look at it as an anomaly, and we would use it. So we need the ability, we need them to send 4 check stubs so we can see paint a picture of what actually happens for these families. Self-employment, income tax returns, sales records, quarterly tax forms, our personal wage records for families that are self-employed. Many of our families clean houses, they're self-employed, and we need that documenting information in order for them to qualify. Other incomes such as child support, alimony, Social Security, VA, retirement checks, unemployment compensation, those unearned income documents. And income, this is very, very important for the guys to understand. Income that stopped within the last 3 months. For example, and Danielle will explain that further, many times families get very irate when we say, we're seeing that you worked at Walmart. You can look at it in the database. We need you to submit a pink slip that says that you no longer work there. And the reason we need that is because if we don't receive it and we're saying we have to count that income, so that would push a family over our income threshold, where a pink slip would allow us to not count that income. Guys, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle, and she's going to do slide 31 to 38, and then Sharon Booker will come in and do 39 to 42. Thank you so much, guys.
Good morning, everyone, once again. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I'm assuming so. I will now take you through a practice scenario to further your knowledge of CCAP eligibility requirements. We will then go through a set of question and answers in relation to the scenario that we will read. Brianna B. Rouge, age 23, date of birth January 14, 1997, is the mother of Cara, age 4, date of birth February 28, 2016. She has come to your child care center and would like to enroll Cara in your program, but needs help filling out the CCAP application. Brianna works 25 hours a week as a cashier at Walgreens with an hourly wage of $8 for $800 per month. She receives $200 per month in child support payments from Cara's father, who does not live with Brianna. Brianna is also a part-time student at Baton Rouge Community College where she goes to class for 6 hours per week. She and Cara live with Brianna's mother, Regina Rouge, age 40, date of birth March 23rd, 1980, and Regina's boyfriend of 14 years, Tom Baton, age 38, date of birth April 1st, 1982. Regina is a waitress at Tasty's Diner, where she works about 30 hours per week and makes about $8 per hour, for a total of $960 per month. Tom, which is her boyfriend, also works full-time at River Construction, but has not been working for the past 3 weeks due to an injury he received while working on the job. He's been receiving $150 per week from a workers' compensation fund for about $600 per month. Brianna would like Cara to receive childcare services from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. Brianna and her family live at 3716 Quality Way in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70802, and their phone number is 225-342-0090. So there's a lot of things going on in this scenario. So we will go through some questions and answers to try to give you some clarity about Brianna's household. All right, so the first question is, who is included in Brianna's household? And this, as Ms. Melinda touched prior, we have a lot of people that we read about in the household that you would initially consider. You have Brianna, you have Cara, you have Regina, and you have Tom. But remember, when you're considering a household, you want to look at the legal guardian and the person that is financially responsible for Cara. Can you click it for me, Taylor, to reveal the answer? So here we have the household composition consists in this case of Brianna and Cara. All right, the next question is, what are her sources of income? So here, when we're talking about income, we know that she works at Walgreens, but she also receives child support from Cara's father, who does not live in the household. So her earned income would be her amount that she received from Walgreens and the amount that she receives from child support from Cara's father. Can you reveal the answer for us, Taylor? So here, once again, we would consider the Walgreens income as earned income, and we would consider the child support amount that she receives as unearned income. So whenever you look at those total, you can click it, Taylor. Thank you. She receives the $800 plus the $200, which gives her $1,000 for her monthly gross income. So based on her household size and monthly income, where does she fall on the monthly gross income chart? So this is our sliding fee scale located at the bottom of your screen. And remember, for this household, it's only 2 persons, Brianna and Cara. So she cannot exceed the 2411. And you can reveal the answer, Taylor. So a household of 2 persons equals the 2411. So now that we have gathered all of this information, based on the information provided, is Brianna eligible to apply for CCAP? And you can reveal the answer. So the answer is yes. Brianna would be eligible for CCAP based on these preliminary criteria. Next slide. So now that we know all of this in regards to Brianna and her household, the next question you need to ask yourself is, what types of verification documents will Brianna need to attach or upload with her application? Well, first, we know we need the birth certificate to verify age and relationship to Cara to Brianna. So we will ask for the birth certificate of Cara. We also want the last 4 consecutive check stubs or an employer statement within 45 days of the application date. This is to ensure that, as Ms. Melinda mentioned, that These are all check stubs that we can use without skipping a date. If she has any income tax returns that she wants to send to give us a yearly picture of her income amount made, she can also submit that as well. Because we know that child support was received, we asked for about 12 months, but we really captured the 6 consecutive months that Brianna received child support for Cara. And this is just for us to get a great overview of how much child support is coming in on that unearned income tab. Termination notice or statement from former employer. If Brianna had worked anywhere else besides Walgreens within the last 3 months, we would need to see a termination notice of that employment. Because we have a system called Work Number, we can check to see if Brianna has any other employment. A lot of times when applicants apply for child care assistance, they leave off employers because they don't want to exceed that maximum household max for their 2-person household or 3-person household. So they'll leave off employers. Or on the upside, we need to know if they have terminated the previous employer so we don't count that income in the household. So had Brianna been working at Walgreens and Burger King, but she no longer works there, and when we looked at Work Number, it reflected both Burger King and Walgreens, we would count both incomes until we received the termination notice from Burger King stating that she no longer worked there. Immunization records, as Ms. Melinda stated, needs to be all up to date to make sure that Cara is ready to attend a quality child care facility. And then, because we know that Brianna attends Baton Rouge Community College, we would need a statement from school or job training indicating the number of hours that she goes per week, or any accredited entity or training program just deeming her as a full-time status. This also includes any online schools as well. Next slide, please, Taylor. Thank you. So here, we need to verify Brianna's child support, and we need to make sure that they have a couple of fields that are mandatory for us to ensure that this is the amount that she's receiving for the correct child. They can pull up their child support history from the child support enforcement case information once they log into their child support account and profile. Here we just want to verify that the custodial party is Brianna Rouge and that she's receiving a total of $200 per month for Cara, which is located as the child's name. Next slide. So verification of check stubs, remember we want at least 45 days prior or 4 consecutive check stubs. We want to make sure that the check stubs have these qualifying factors such as the number of hours, the rate of pay, the pay periods, and pay dates. And just once you get familiar with recognizing check stubs, as Ms. Melinda stated, you're gonna see that sometimes families may alter their check stubs or they may create their own check stubs. We've had some Word document check stubs created, but we always go back and verify these check stubs. So you don't have to be a pro right off the bat in identifying check stubs or become a private investigator just yet, but we do verify all income and we call employers to make sure that those amounts are correct. Next slide. Okay, here we have shot records that was provided from Brianna. We see that Cara's check stubs are all up to date. If they weren't up to date, whenever we pull the information off of links, it would verify and show us that some of Cara's shots are past due, and it would actually state past due on there. From there, if any of her shots were past due, she would have to make an appointment with her pediatrician and to go to the doctor to have those shots updated. She can send us a copy of that appointment card to let us know when that appointment is, and then we will follow up with her to make sure that she followed through with that appointment. Social Security card here, Again, this is optional, but it is another way for us to make a connection to a household. And then lastly, a verification of birth so we can deem age and relationship. And here you can see that Cara is the child in this case, lists her birth date, and then it lists the mother and the father, even though the father, Brad Pitt, does not live in the household with them. Next slide. Okay, and lastly, we have a copy of her school schedule because she is in school at Baton Rouge Community College. And here we can see that we have her name on there, when she was enrolled, and the enrollment status is full-time. And that's basically all we need. If they deem Brianna as a full-time student, whichever amount of hours that may be, then we take that from an accredited institution. And then lastly, the change of report of changes form, which we know is a CCAP 10. This is for them to make any of the changes that they need in regards to their case. And we ask that they do it within 10 days of the change so that we can have time to process these. This includes anything from household address change, any household composition, whether they're adding or removing a child, if they need to do a provider change, if they're changing the child from part-time status to full-time status, or if they want to add or remove any household designees, which is the people that they deem allowable to check their child in and out of the child care facility when they cannot. And any other changes in income, or if they want to report any termination of employment or training. So now I will turn it over to Sharon.
Hi guys, I'm back again. This is the EC Guide portal. What happened, Taylor?
Sorry about that. Can you see the screen or is it still messed up?
Still blank.
All right, give me a sec.
Okay, great. This is the EC Guide portal, and this is the portal that the EC Guides will be using. This portal has everything that you will need to process the applicant's application. As you can see here, I'm gonna click. Can you click on that for me, Taylor?
Yeah. I'm gonna try, and can you
Right
see
there.
that?
On the link. Can you click on the link?
I've clicked on the link. I'm struggling with my share. Let me see. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, thank you. Okay. As you can see, there are several tabs on each side of the portal. The first tab is print consent form. This is the first form. Once you come in contact with the client, with the parent, you will sit down with them and print down the consent form. And the consent form gives us a synopsis of their rights and responsibility as a CCAP participant.
Sharon, can I add something real quick? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Guys, with Sharon, and Sharon's going to continue, but we specifically designed these tabs so that they go from step 1 all the way around. So as Sharon talks, you're going to notice she's moving down, and so it'll make it very easy. Sharon, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Would you click on the form, Taylor, so they can have a preview of what it looks like? Thank you. Okay, this is the consent form. The consent form gives the client their rights and responsibility. It ensures them that all their documents that we receive, that we're holding them confidential. It ensures the eligibility decision will be made within 30 days on their case. It notes to them any changes that are to be made, as Danielle just previously said, that they need to be reported to the department within 10 days. It tells them about giving false information that could have them lose their CCAP certification, and also be referred to foreign department. It gives permission for the department to contact persons to verify their need for assistance and documents such as what Ms. George just spoke about, the check stub. This gives us permission to call the employer and verify their employment. It gives also releases to the provider. We can give permission to the provider of what the CCAP agency will be paying and the status of their applicant's case. We'll move from consent form when doing a case to client search. The client search is where, yeah, you can click on. The client search is where you would put in that client's name, and it would tell us if that client is an existing participant. If the client is an existing participant, then you would not need to file an application. Here you'll have a sign-in account. We won't be able to sign in and tell it because we don't have access passwords. I just wanted them to know what it was. You'll be able to sign in, put your code in, and check. All you would need is the person's name and 4 last digits of their social security number. Tab 3 would be send immunizations. You would send immunizations check to the EC completion team. They would check for immunizations, and they would send you an email back telling you, yes, immunizations are update. If not, then they would tell you that you would need an appointment card from that particular applicant.
Sharon, let me interject as well. Guys, I know we're showing you a lot right here, but in the following trainings, Sharon's gonna take you for a deep dive into this. Today is just a brief overview. She's just showing you how it's gonna look, but don't get nervous. She may not be going in order. She's just showing you a deep dive into the tabs. But when we meet again with our computers and all of our accesses, she's gonna take you for a deep dive. And by the time you leave, I promise you're gonna understand all of this. Sharon, I'm sorry.
Okay, the next one is the work request. The same thing you would do, you would send in a request to the analyst, and you can request all of these at the same time, one behind the other, and they will send them back to you, letting you know whether this person is found in work number. If they're not in work number, that helps you to see what Ms. Danielle just said about check stubs. They may give you check stubs for one and not for another, but the work number will show if they're working two different places. The next one is a zero balance. If they've had CCAP within a period of time and have a balance owed, then they would send you a notice saying that they have a balance. Most of the time they don't have a balance, or they've not had CCAP for a long time. So you'll get a zero balance from the completion team. Are there any questions on that? Okay, the next one would be you would go to the interview process would be the wizard. You can't get in the wizard, I'm just showing it to you now, but this is where you would put all the details about the client, the check stubs, the members in the household, the earned income credit, the earned income, all of that will go into the wizard. Once you finish the wizard, then you will go here to print out a complete consultation form. When you print down the consultation form, it requests any missing information or verification that the client did not bring to you at that time. You check it off. There's a date on that. You can click it, Taylor. They can see that one. Thank you. It comes up where it says the early childhood guide. It gives you, you would give them 5 days from the date that they're giving you the information to submit the application, the information back to you. Those are the 5 days that we talked about in the time frame that they need to get anything that's missing, whether it's the birth certificate, the 45-day check stubs, earned income credit, immunization, school attendance, or child support. They will sign at the bottom of the form and give it back to you, any information that's missing. Could you go back, Taylor? If the client has all the information that you need, or the completion team has sent you the work history of the client, then you will not need to collect that. Then you will print down the completion form. The completion form is a checklist of everything, all documentations and verifications that's needed to process the application. You would check off the boxes for yes and no, whether or not they turned in those particular verifications. You have on the other side the special population that will be talked about later within the slides. The CCAP 10 is the change form that Danielle showed you in the previous slide for any changes that need to be made on the case. The CCAP 87 is used for if there are persons who just started the job that Ms. Melinda talked about earlier, then that's the only time they'll use the CCAP 87. If they've been on that job for a period of time where they receive 4 check stubs, then that's what we'll be looking for, the check stubs. Can you go back, Taylor, please? Now, when we talk about I want to also mention there are several links over here. When we talk about check stubs and 45 days, you won't have to count how many days is 45 days. We have a 45-day check finder right here. And can you click on that one? Okay. The application day, say the application day was March 9th, 2020. Then the 45-day range for the check stubs would be 1/20/2020, which means we can use any check stubs from 1/24 all the way to March 9th, 2020. That would be the 45-day range. So you don't have to try to figure out what the 45 days is already built in the dashboard for you. All you have to do is enter in the date of the application you're receiving, and the 45 days will pop up. Can you take me back to the dashboard, please? Thank you. We are required, because we are public funded, federally funded program, we are required to access them the right to vote. So if you have a client that comes in, when you get into the wizard, it's going to ask, do they want to vote? If they want to vote, or they want help with filling out the application for vote, then you would click on the voters registration right here.
Guys, let me share with you it is mandated, it is federally mandated that we offer each client that comes into our program the chance to register to vote. It is very, very important. It is audited. A lot of clients choose not to utilize our services, but we must offer it.
And this is the voters registration form right here. You would fill that out with them. You do not have to mail it back. All of the forms that you fill out, any documentation, verification that you receive, you would upload it into OnBase. Thank you. Okay. Once the completion form is filled out, you receive all the documents from the client. Then you would send it to the completion team. The completion team would then verify the documentation And if it's all completed, then they would go on to pin the case that you have submitted in the wizard. If there are persons who come to you who may not know their provider or where the provider in their community is, we have a provider, find a provider finder right here. You click on it. They can put in the address and it'll come up with providers in their particular area. And right there, you can see all the providers that's in that particular area that the parish that they're in. It has all the information that the EC guide would need to put into the wizard. The sliding fee scale is the same scale that Danielle showed you, Ms. Jordan showed you, with the amounts of money that is needed. This is for the persons right here in the yellow. They won't be using that, but this is for persons who are doing redeterminations and fall within the 85 percentile. If they're on, once the application has been verified and you get the email back from the completion team that they're ready to go, we ask that you have that client to go to their nearest tax facility. And the tax facility locations are right here, where you can tell them where they need to go that's closest to them. Wherever parish they live in, they can stroll down, and this is updated within our office. Once they have did their finger image, they contact you, you contact the completion team, and we then put the verification, we then put the authorizations on, and they can start. All of this is to be done within the 5 to 10 day frame. I think I've covered all the slides on here. At the bottom,
Amy sent in a question or a comment. She said to keep in mind that not all providers in School Finder are CCAP providers, and you're absolutely correct, Amy. Not all are Type 3 in School Finder are CCAP providers, or accept CCAP. I'm sorry, not all accept CCAP. We're going to be working really hard to update and to send you as much information as possible. And you're right, the EC guide is going to have to be knowledgeable or receive listings of centers that are accepting CCAP. Thank you, Amy.
Could you scroll down for me, Taylor, please? Thank you. At the bottom, there are different pictures at the bottom that tell you can chat with the completion team. You can email if you have questions, or if you need to emergency upload something. All of this is at the bottom. It's not letting me show you. Can you click on it? Just put your cursor on it, Taylor.
Can you say that again? What should I put my cursor on?
Right,
Just these?
Yeah. Calculator, map, yeah. Emergency upload, yeah. Chat with the analyst. If you have questions, you can contact us through a chat and we will answer you. Someone's going to be monitoring it. Find a CCAP form if that person comes in, as I said before, and they recently started on the job, you will be able to find the CCAP 87 in here. They're all forms in there. Email, this is where your emails will go. Information about CCAP. and ask the
Amy
question.
asked a question, Sharon. She wanted to know when would we use the emergency upload. When we go into the deep dive, Amy, we're going to take you through all scenarios. It may be someone who they waited, and you're going to find this happens all the time. Clients wait till 11:59. They've been with the guide and they're about to expire. They've gone through 30 days and the guide is waiting for them to turn in one document. And we get off at 4:30 and they send the document at 4:29.3. So we're going to go through every scenario and you'll understand when they would use the emergency upload and why. Again, remember, I want you guys to remember, this is just an overview that Sharon's doing. You are going to do a deep dive where you're going to do hands-on. You're going to be able to ask specific questions. The reason we did the overview is so that you can go back, you can look at it, you can look at the slides. Taylor's going to post the slides. You can look at it. You can develop your questions. So when we come back together and we do that deep dive, you will already have some questions formulated in your mind. And through the deep dive, if those questions aren't answered, you'll know to get your answers. And you may have ideas. That's another thing. We don't just want you for answers. We need you for ideas. So we're doing the overview so that when you go back to your specific areas and you go through, you may have ideas, things that we've overlooked. Thanks so much, Amy. Sharon, back to you.
Next slide. I think I've covered everything on the dashboard. The process. The EC Guide and the EC Completion Team have prospective team assignments in CAFE. You'll be working hand in hand. The print the consent form, which I showed you. Upload the consent form into OnBase. Complete a client search to determine if the applicant has an existing CCAP case. We looked at that, the search bar. Request for immunization, work number, 0 balances. And then you'll create the case. A member of the CCAP completion team will mail email results to the EC Guide and copy the program manager. EC Guides complete forms with participants in a wizard. Through the wizard, you may see pin to caps. I have on there, do not pin to cap. That will be done within the office. If application chooses yes for voter registration, the cap.
Well, Sharon, I need to explain something. I need to go back. We could not remove the pin to caps tab. We struggled with that, guys. You're gonna see pin to caps, we're gonna ask you not to use it. The reason is we're giving you access to our system so you can upload. You cannot pin it to caps because it will cause problems from outside. You can't pin to, caps is an antiquated system and it doesn't like people trying to use it from outside. It doesn't like to be stroked from outside, but we couldn't remove the button. So we're gonna talk to the EC Guides to let them know. We're gonna use the pin to caps button so we can continue with their process. We're working jointly to process an application. So there were certain things that we couldn't remove because we're giving you access. Okay? I'm sorry, Sharon, go ahead.
And the reason why you see the do not pin to caps within this page more than one time is because once you go through the wizard, putting in the information, you're going to see pin to caps within different screens as you move along. So that's why it's in different places. Click evaluation interviewer, that you can click on. It will let you know if you missed some information that needed to be inputted into the wizard. Next slide. The EC Guide completes the consultation form. Verification documents are requested from the client. If the client has verification documents, the EC Guide will upload the documents into the EC Guide folder in OnBase. Each EC Guide will have a folder in OnBase, and those documents will go into there. The EC Guide documents completion form is to ensure documents need to be certified, applications are present. The signed document is uploaded into OnBase. So that's your last form, the completion form. You are verifying that you have received all the necessary verification, documents, everything you need to certify this case, and it's coming over to the Louisiana Department of Education completion team. Applications assigned to analysts in the completion team. A verification is conducted by the analyst, and the analyst will notify the EC guide by email. Each EC guide will have an email set up within your network in order to get information from us and send us information. If additional verifications are needed, once the case is reviewed by the analyst on the completion team, the application will be pinned by the team member, and designated CCAP member will review and sign the completion form uploaded into OnBase. We're going to be sending you a copy of that back saying, yes, the completion form is completed and is ready. Your person has already went to the TOTS local community place. They had their finger images, and we're getting ready to certify that case. Next slide. EC Guide team will certify a case using the CCAP partner ID. This is what will be done on our side. Additionally, we will send a 12 notice and a 13. The 12 notices to the parents, letting them know what is being paid on behalf of their child by CCAP. The 13 notice goes to the provider and it lets them know the same amount that we are paying to them on behalf of the client. CCAP 14 household designee notice will go out if the client wishes to choose 3 persons other than themselves to be able to scan in and pick up their child, drop off and pick up their children. That is what is called the household designee. We will send the EDLS link to the client as well, and case notes will be documented in caps. An email will sign a copy of the completion form will be sent to the EC guide. We will email you a signed.
I'm sorry, Sharon. Can you hold on 1 minute? Paul asked a question based on your prior comments that I want to answer. She said, will a CCAP notice 12 be sent to the EC guide as well? We don't need to send it to the EC guide because you have to remember we're in the same system with the EC guide. So when the completion team sends back the completion form with all the information, we're communicating directly with the EC guide. He's not going to need to receive the 12 because he's receiving the communication prior to. The 12 is mailed from our system, but the EC guide is going to get real-time communication with us. So immediately when he uploads the form, the completion team looks at it, they email him back. He already knows before the form is sent out to the family. The reason we have to still send the form to the family is you have to remember the family is the one that is applying. The family is the one that we're certifying, so we have to notify the family. They're going to get their CCAP 12 a couple of days after the EC guide is already known and probably contacted them. We just, because of federal reasons, everything that is in here, we had to look at how do we ensure that we meet our federal mandates. We have to communicate with the parent. So the parent will probably get the 12 3 or 4 days after the guide has already gotten in touch.
Okay. Until completion form is received and approved by the program manager or designated CCAP staff member, the case will remain in CAFE, which means the incomplete application. If you're waiting on some documentation from that parent to be returned to you to return to the completion team, it will remain in the wizard. Once the case is approved to be pending by the completion team, then management will sign off on the completion form and the analyst will upload it to OnBase. Families must complete a finger image at their nearest TOTS location in the community and notify the EC guide, who will notify the completion team that scanning is completed. The completion team will then place authorization. Our policy is we do not put any authorizations on a certified case until the family has gone and did the finger image. Next slide. And that's it for ECI for right now.
I'm wondering, Melinda, before we jump into the special population section, if maybe we should give folks maybe like a 10-minute break to run to the restroom, grab some coffee or whatever they need, and then come back. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, let's do that then, folks. Thanks for sticking with us. I know these virtual trainings can be long, so let's take a little break and let's try to start back at 10:50.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully everyone was able to take a little bit of a break. Danielle, are you signed back on? Will you be starting this special population section?
Yes, I'm ready to rock and roll when you are.
Okay, great.
Okay, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed your break. Now we're going to discuss special population. As many of you know, the Child Care Assistance Program established a waiting list, which has since been relinquished. However, not all applicants were placed on that waiting list. So these are the categories in which we include in special population. The first category is STEP, TANF, and CASH participants. The STEP acronym stands for Strategies to Empower People, and TANF is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, in which they provide cash assistance to participants and also help them seek employment. This is housed at DCFS, and we work in collaboration with them to establish who those participants are. Our next category is homelessness. Anyone that falls or applies as homelessness under the McKinney-Vento definition does not get placed on the waiting list. The next category is our disabled or disability participants, as established by IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And we have given you a couple of examples of the verification needed for applicants who apply under the disability. Next is foster care. If we have any foster care parents that are applying and they provide services to foster care children, they will not be placed on the waiting list as well. And then, of course, we have our Early Head Start Child Care partnerships. We work in collaboration with these partnerships to provide services in order to connect Early Head Start participants to quality child care services. The applicants must provide verification documents to indicate that they fall within one of these special populations, such as their Social Security Administration benefits, their IEP, as we explained earlier, or their IFSP.
Danielle, let me jump in for a minute. When we say Early Head Start Child Care partnerships, and I want to make sure that I give you some clarification information on that, this is not Early Head Start grants. The partnerships are with Type 3 centers that are operating under the grant. And so those Type 3 centers, those partnership centers that accept child care assistance are the ones that are in these special populations. Back to you, Danielle.
Thanks. Next slide, Taylor. All right, so let's talk a little bit about homelessness. Children who are experiencing homelessness, as I stated, are defined by the McKinney-Vento Definition Act. They are categorically eligible for child care services. We have created a whole system around homelessness in which it includes a homeless CCAP liaison, as well as a homeless LEA that works in the community with these schools in order to identify additional homeless children that may qualify underneath this McKinney-Vento Homeless Act. The CCAP Homeless Liaison works in connection with the LEA in order to make sure that these participants receive a 1-year certification. However, they can apply as homeless as many times as they need to. We understand that the homeless population, they're not just homeless once in a lifetime, that this can be a continuous situation. So as long as the LEA and our CCAP Homeless Liaison is able to verify that they are homeless, we will continue to provide them child care assistance services. Once again, at redetermination of the family's case, if the family still qualifies and has not exceeded the 85% of the state median income, that family can be certified again and again and again. We also reach out to the family. A lot of times if they are in a homeless situation, they move around a lot. So we try to keep as much communication with the family as possible. That's why we established 2 representatives to reach out to these families and try to make sure that we can give them the adequate time that they need in order to submit these documents. Our homeless cases are certified upon receipt, and we give them 90 calendar days to submit all of the verification documents that we went through in the practice scenario. So had Brianna B. Rouge been homeless, she would have submitted her application. She would have checked homeless on the application, and we would have given her 90 days to submit all of her verification documents so that we can go ahead and process her case. Next slide, please. Okay, transitional living is also something that we have implemented within the Child Care Assistance Program. It is defined as any residential program or facility providing housing to homeless people, but not limited to runaway shelters, emergency shelters, programs for parenting youth, programs for individuals fleeing domestic violence situations. We see that a lot. Transitional housing programs, whether they are inpatient or outpatient, and then prisoner reentry programs. So of course they would have to provide us documentation of this. Somebody just can't say, you know, I'm in a transitional living program. We would definitely have to verify that, and by verification, we have a transitional living affidavit that should be completed by the program stating that that person is a participant in the transitional living program in order for us to approve those services. Next slide, please. Okay, so as we continue with this overview, you know, applicants within a transitional living program indicate on the application that they are certified, also getting the 90 days. We make the multiple attempts just like we do with homelessness. The ENT hour requirements are waived with the supporting affidavit received from the transitional living facility. So again, the ENT hours of 20 are waived in this case because they fall within that homeless population, and they do not need the ENT hours as long as we can verify that they are participating in that transitional living facility. The Louisiana Workforce Commission registration is waived for applicants with transitional living indicated on the application as well. So they don't have to go and create a Louisiana Workforce Commission account to verify that they're actively seeking employment because they are participating in a transitional living facility program. But their income cannot exceed the 55 state median income threshold for transitional living applications. So that goes, applicants, that goes back to the sliding fee scale. So once again, I'm gonna tie it back to the scenario. If Brianna and Cara were participating in the transitional living program and Brianna gave us her check stub from Walgreens and she exceeded that 55%, which is the total amount for that two-person household, then she would not qualify. Next slide, please. All right, and lastly, we've spoken numerous times thus far about disability, but per the CCAP guidelines, we can extend child care services from that birth to 12 age range to 13 to 17 if they have a disability. And what we mean by that is if they have a physical, mental, or emotional disability, we just need verifying documents stating what type of disability it is so that we can adequately provide services for this age range outside of that birth to 12. And again, what those documents and verifications look like is if they send us in a IFSP, a IEP, which is ages 3 to 21, in this case, it will be deemed appropriate. Current supplemental security income, which is SSI award for the child that they may be receiving on their behalf. And this SSI income award letter will be considered unearned income. And then the CCAP 3D form, verification of disability. This is a form that we provide to the families to take to their physicians to be completed on that child's behalf. And again, we use this from ages 13 to 17. And lastly, just a written medical statement from the child's physician would also suffice in verifying disability. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Danielle. I want to go back in, and a lot of what I'm going to say for the next couple of slides is a kind of repeat of some very, very important information. We talked about the National Voter Registration Act, NVRA, and it is very important that our guides understand that when the program was under DCFS, they paid back a lot of funds because of the fact that they weren't completing the NVRA timely. It's not just that the NVRA must be completed, but we need to get the documents mailed out immediately within 24 to 48 hours of our receipt. We must get those documents sent out. So Congress enacted the National Voter Registration Act in 1993, also known as NVRA, to enhance voting opportunities for every American. The act has made it easier for all Americans to register to vote, and all public programs are mandated to do this. The Louisiana voter registration application is included with both the CCAP 2, and
I lost Melinda. Can anybody else? Does anybody else not hear Melinda?
is a reported change.
Yes, she went out, but Melinda, you went out for a second. Your phone went out for a second, so you might want to start from the voter registration is connected to the CCAP 2 application.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. The National Voter Registration application is included, as I said, with both the CCAP 2, the CCAP 22, and the CCAP 10. Whenever you hear us say CCAP 2, we are talking about a regular CCAP application. That's our term for a regular CCAP application. When you hear us say CCAP 22, we are talking about a pandemic CCAP application. And there's a voter statement on that pandemic application. And then a CCAP 10 is a report of change form. Each one of those have to have a statement or connection to a link to ensure that we ask families if they would like to register to vote. Clients should complete the form and submit it when submitting the CCAP application or request a household change. Next slide. Redeterminations, I'm going to briefly touch on those. Redeterminations occur in 12 months, after 12 months of services. If a child is 3, after 24 months of services. The applications can be received via cafe, email, on base, or by mail. The redet application can be submitted up to 45 days in advance of the close of the redetermination period. We send out to the client an 11RC 45 days before the end of their redet. So 45 days before their case is coming up for redet, we inform the client. And then we also, because of after talking to R&Rs, lead agencies, and providers, we initiated, I think roughly about 2 years ago, we send out an 11RCP. That's a form that lets the provider know that within 45 days, this client is coming up for redetermination. So the guide may be receiving those redetermination applications as well. The notice informs the client and the provider that they must complete an application for redet online. If the client does not have the internet, and because of this program, the guide may be working directly with the family to submit these. Next slide. So this is some CCAP household eligibility contact information. We have always asked providers to put this information out so families know how to contact us. We want to be available and accessible to families. The guide is going to have additional contact information because the guide is going to be able to contact not only on the portal, but to work directly with Sharon Booker, who's over eligibility, and the CCAP completion team. So the guide is going to have direct access to us. Also, we will be working together on the portal, and that's why the guide is able to see so much of what's going on in the system. The guide will have a chat feature, ask questions, upload emergency documents feature, the features that Sharon Booker so graciously and wonderfully explained to you guys. The guide, and we're going to go for a deep dive. So you're going to know exactly what the guide needs to do and how they need to do it. Again, guys, we do not expect you to understand every single aspect of the things that we have explained. Today is pretty much an overview. It's getting your feet wet. It's getting you to see where we're headed with this. It's getting you to turn those creative juices and put those thinking caps on to be able to ask questions, to give insight into things we may have missed, to further encourage us to do more deep dive and more digging and more clarifying. When we come back together, we're going to have different trainings, and when we come back together for the deep dive, we're hoping that you will have access to the EC Guide portal. You will do some mock applications. You will be able to ask questions. We want the next part of our training for the EC Guide to be extremely interactive. In the years that we've had CCAP since 2015, we realized that in training our analysts to do this job, it takes hands-on. There are so many moving parts that to just talk at you is not going to equip you to do the job that we're asking you to do. So we want to have an interactive training where you can actually pretend to load applications. You can work directly with Sharon. You can stop and ask questions. You can get frustrated and say, I'm not understanding, and we can repeat. And so that's what we're looking forward to for the next part of the training. Taylor?
Great. Thank you, Melinda. There was a question that came over the chat from Emmy and Lafayette asking if the early childhood guides could assist in redeterminations. Yes, absolutely they can, and they should feel equipped to do so. However, at this point, the redeterminations won't contribute toward their billable applications. Those are just first-time applications. So just be mindful of that. We may reassess that as we get into this work. We may determine actually the redeterminations is a pretty big lift and we need to count that as a billable deliverable in some kind of way. But right now it's not written into the contract that way.
Right, and I want to share the redetermination information, the 11RC and the 11RCP that I explained go directly out from us. It is already asked to inform the client of what they need. Pretty much all they need is to update their income information, do an application, share any changes that they have within the household, and the client certifies them. And they're not yet, they're still receiving CCAP because the 11RC and the 11RCP go out giving them a 45-day window before they close.
Great. Thanks for clarifying, Melinda. Okay, so I'm going to walk us through quickly some slides on recruitment and outreach, and then we're going to wrap up with next steps and give a sense of where we're heading. And then I'll save some time for questions. I do not think we're going to go all the way to 1. I know the calendar on the calendar invite says to 1. I think we'll probably wrap it up in the next 30 to 45 minutes, so you guys can break a little early and have lunch and resume the rest of your day. So these recruitment and outreach slides here, I know that many of you who are lead agencies who have been doing the work to coordinate enrollment over the last several years, probably have a good handle on this already. So this is absolutely not with the intention of saying, you know, you don't know how to do this level of recruitment and support to families. I do think it's important, however, especially for those of you who intend to onboard new staff to do this work for the first time, that you be mindful and that we be mindful of how we're training and supporting these new staff to do this level of recruitment and outreach, and make sure that they're getting the professional development they need to be successful. So I'm going to share a few slides with you today, and then we can certainly revisit this as folks onboards and prepare to train staff. But really, I think recruitment and outreach, I think it starts with identifying the community need. So first and foremost, these guides should really be deeply asking themselves and families they engage with questions about the community need. Who are the families in the community that may be difficult to reach or may not be the ones who are showing up to apply for CCAP or coming to your enrollment events? What are the characteristics in your specific parish or regions of your parish that make families at risk or hard to reach? Are there other services or programs that are available in the community that already are targeting or partnering with those populations? Can you develop partnerships with those community organizations to build connections with families? And we'll send out these slides, but here's a link to an Engaging Families toolkit that our team has reviewed and thinks it's pretty high quality in case you want to share it. And of course, as you think about what potential partnerships you may want to develop in your community, these are some organizations that we're aware of that likely you are already aware of that might be good opportunities to build partnerships. So thinking about reaching out to these to see if they have any standing touch points or channels with communities, with families who may be interested in signing up for CCAP. Here are some possible barriers. Of course, there's likely more, but this comes from this article that's linked here at the bottom. When you're doing this level of outreach and recruitment, if you're finding that families are hard to reach, it's important to interrogate why is it that families are hard to reach. It may not be because they understand the program and don't want to receive CCAP. It may be for some other reason. Maybe they feel like they can't afford childcare and therefore they're not seeking it out. They don't understand the nature of CCAP. They don't know whether or not they could make it work even if they had CCAP. Potentially they lack understanding about the importance of high quality childcare. Maybe they have informal childcare and they don't see why they or their child would benefit from enrolling their child in a CCAP provider's care. Potentially they feel distrustful of government agencies based on their own perceptions or prior experiences. They may believe that the risks of actually going out there and making the connection with what they perceive as a government agency to access childcare may outweigh the benefits. And of course, potentially they fear the unknown or are socially timid. So it's really important to think about why is it that families may be hard to reach and think about strategies to put in place to overcome some of those challenges and barriers. And then of course, thinking about just access in general and how services may be hard to reach for families. It may also be that families require transportation and don't have transportation, or potentially that they are seeking non-traditional childcare hours and they don't know that these services would actually be appropriate for their needs. So I'm not going to read through each of these, but as we go through these, I would encourage you to think through when you and the guides conducting this work encounter particular barriers, like this one, maybe transportation and the schedule for families is a barrier. Start thinking about what are those solutions, how can you support the guides, and how can you yourself start to overcome these barriers for families. Additionally, language barriers may be a challenge. We've included a resource here that I believe our team at the department also uses when they're working with families who are non-native English speakers. So this is Language Link. It's a translation service. You or folks on your team doing this work can call this number, and then they can actually receive translation support over the phone, which could be of use to you and the families that you're working with. Of course, if families are just lacking information, it's really important to get information to families in a format that's usable to them, that makes sense to them, that appeals to what they care about when it comes to childcare. And here are some other strategies if you're encountering families who may have had previous negative experiences with government agencies or entities, and families that have challenges around housing. And of course, Melinda and Danielle already went into homelessness, as it's a special population and has special considerations for childcare assistance. Oops. Here's some additional tips for thinking through family engagement. Again, I think we've emphasized this a couple times, but make sure that you and the guides that you employ are listening and learning from families as you engage with families. Make sure that the time is appropriate when families are actually thinking about enrollment. Make sure that the setting is appropriate. Is it the right place? Is it adequately private so that families feel comfortable discussing their eligibility or their potential eligibility for a program like CCAP? And then this is something that we've heard from Ed Navigator, who works in the New Orleans context, supporting families to make choices about K-12 schools enrollment. It's really important as you're working with families and as you're out in the community and potentially make contact with a family who might then and there not be interested in CCAP, but might at some point be interested, that you ask the family for the contact information and that you stay in frequent contact with that family. Really, you should think about these families as kind of like a caseload in your community, and you're building that caseload of families who you might at some point be able to support through the application process. So you might think of doing something like getting their contact information and then just routinely kind of sending them or touching base with them information, due dates, upcoming reminders. And then be sure that when you are communicating with families, as they ask questions or as they request information, that you are always responding and following up in a timely manner so that they're not having to wait for a response from you all. So we're gonna follow up with more information about this by email, but in the contract, the deliverables for the month of April, the first billable month, are attendance at a training. And so you are attending this training today, so that will meet that deliverable. The other deliverables is to submit a recruitment and onboarding plan. So we're gonna follow up by email with what that will look like. I was hoping that we would be able to share it with you at this training today, but we don't have it quite ready for you, but we're gonna try to keep this as straightforward and as simple as possible. This is not gonna be a really long, big ask. We just want to start talking to you and start getting you guys to engage in the thought process of how are you actually gonna carry out this work? Who are you gonna task with this work? Are you gonna utilize current staff? Are you gonna hire new staff to carry out this work? What kind of strategies are you thinking about using to begin reaching out and engaging with families? What potential partners have you identified in your community? And are you working on any kind of outreach materials? So again, we'll follow up by email with instructions for how you'll complete and submit this. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Amanda or Melinda or her team. All right, Melinda, do you want to talk about, I'll talk about the contract stuff, and then maybe you can talk about what we expect for the next training. How does that sound?
It sounds great to me.
Okay, great. So I will say, and Melinda has already made this point a couple times, we were hopeful that this week we would be able to have an in-person training where it would be really hands-on and you all could actually go in and test the application process and really get a feel for it. But however, because of the COVID-19 situation, there are several barriers that made that impossible. Obviously, we can't be in the same physical space, so that poses some challenges. But on top of that, we need to administer to you all some OTS approved laptops so that you have at least one secure laptop for each community so that you can log into the cafe portal and all of the stuff that Sharon previewed for you earlier today. However, there's a little bit of a supply chain issue. We're struggling to secure laptops, and this I think is true just across the country right now because laptops come from all over the world and different pieces come from all over the world. So there's a little bit of a backlog, I think, for laptops. So we're hopeful that we'll have more information for you soon, but that makes it difficult to right now have that second training. So we're going to cancel the training for Thursday, and we'll reach out to you about following up with another more in-depth training, hopefully in sometime in the month of May. What you should be doing now, however, is taking steps to get this contract finalized. So I know Amanda has been working with you to sign the contract. So if you have any questions about that, please continue to communicate with Amanda or myself. We will work with you. I think as we've said, if you're not quite ready or you're not able because of the situation in your district to sign a contract yet, that's fine. Just let us know what you think that timeline will be. All right, Melinda, do you want to add anything about the training?
Sure. The training is going to, as I've said a couple of times, Sharon alluded to, and so did Taylor. The training we're hoping is going to be more hands-on. As you realize with COVID-19, so much has changed and so much is up in the air. So as we go through processes, as we go through this second part of the training, we want it to be hands-on. We want you to be able to go into a part of our portal where we can actually pretend to take applications, to load applications. One of the things that I shared with you that you need to be doing is look through the things that Sharon shared with you about the portal. See if you have other suggestions or ideas. Look at what we've already developed and see if it formulated some questions in your mind. Write those down so that when we do get together for the second part of the training, we've kind of, you put your toe in, and we're gonna put the whole foot, the whole leg in by the second training. And so it gives you some kind of brief or insight to what's coming and how you can participate in that. An additional thing that you may want to do is Danielle explained to you some of our special populations, some of our populations that need more assistance, to be formulating those, because you can do that pretty much on the phone, formulating those connections to agencies that serve places that serve the population that you will be targeting. So building those collaborations and connections so that when you do begin the process, you have a to-go person in different agencies in your community with different providers in your community. There's so much that can go on. But we are looking forward to the second part of the training. As Taylor said, we want it to be interactive. And I do believe that you are going to understand. We do this a lot. You know, we come into your communities, but we also train childcare staff who process applications. And once we complete the hands-on, I am pretty sure that you are going to master this. So don't get scared.
Thanks, Melinda. Thank you. Okay, y'all. I see a question from Christine in Lafayette. The language link service you provided, can it be used for anyone in coordinated enrollment or just with the EC guides? Melinda, do you know the answer to that? Is that a service that they can utilize during typical coordinated enrollment events, or is this really just for?
I think it can be used. My answer is going to be yes, but I need to do some additional checking. My answer is pretty much yes, it can be used, but I'm going to do some additional checking to make sure.
Okay, great. Oh, Sorintha says yes. Sorintha, maybe have you used this in the past? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Melinda. Thank you all for joining today. I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for questions. Like Melinda said, I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions as we get into the real hands-on component of this training. But I'll pause now and see if there are any questions that we can answer right now. So if you do have questions, you can unmute yourself or you can type into the chat box. Amy asked if we could send the slides. We will definitely send the slides. We'll send those today.
I think we've pretty much been answering the questions as we've gone along.
Yeah.
So it's okay if you don't have any more questions. You probably will by the next training. It's almost assured that you will definitely have more questions by the time we have our next training.
Yeah, I completely agree. As you really get into this, you'll have more questions. Thank you all so much for joining. Thanks, Sorintha. We appreciate that. Hopefully you all are staying safe and staying healthy, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.